Hi, how's it going? Great. I'm going to talk about the value of uncertainty today, something that I do. And we all feel like we want the world to be a little more certain. You know, we want job security. We want to know where we are. We have a little bit of an adverse effect when it comes to uncertainty. And yet we do really weird things, right? So there's a bit of a puzzle in there for scientists. What do? We jump out of airplanes, highly uncertain. We build muscles, like way outside of the normal range, it's highly uncertain. We climb El Capitan without a rope. I know people are already shaking their heads, right? Isn't it bananas? Have you seen the documentary? Ooh, I can't even stay in my seat while I'm watching it. The uncertainty is so uncomfortable to me. Does anybody else have that experience? You see this documentary? Oh, goodness. And last but not least, we dream of going to Mars. Show of hands, who here would go to Mars if you got a free ticket? First run? You guys are nuts. Let's just land there for a second. That is maximally uncertain, okay? Gravity would be different, air would be different, food would be different, where you pee would be different, like everything would be different, maximally uncertain. So we have the sense that we want things to be certain, and yet we do like bonanza things all the time. That's a bit of a puzzle for us. To make sense of it. Actually, it's a very old puzzle, and I'm going to push on that line a little bit today about, why is it that we both feel like we need certainty, and why do we keep doing things that push us out of our certainty? And for somebody like me who's doing computational neuroscience today, it's even more puzzling. So the framework that I work with primarily is a relatively new approach to thinking about cognitive systems. You might not know this unless you're in a cognitive science. I have all my cog science students here, so you guys will know this. But you might not know this, but we're in a kind of Copernican revolution in cognitive science today. It's a very special time to be alive if you're interested in the mind sciences. For a couple of hundred years, we've had one view of what the mind is and how the cognitive architecture might work. And that's being flipped on its head today, like in a radical and really interesting way. So a minute ago, what we thought how the cognitive system, for instance, processes perception, was largely a bottom-up affair. So the world is out there, light hits the world, light hits your sensory apparatus, and then the brain processes that information in a largely bottom-up way. So starting at simple up through complex, and when it reaches the sort of top of the processing hierarchy, then that's the experience you have of the world. And I think if you take that idea home for Thanksgiving and you say it to your mom or your dad, probably they say, yeah, that's something. I don't know if you have those kinds of conversations at your house for Thanksgiving, but if you did, I think you'd have people saying, yeah, I think that's how perception works. And actually, we're flipping that completely on its head today. So rather than thinking of the brain as kind of a passive organ, waiting for the world to come in and then processing that information from the world in a bottom-up, simple through complex way, we're flipping that. Now we think the brain isn't lazy, it's radically proactive. The brain's job and nervous system's job is to figure out how the world works so that it can create for itself from the top down what it expects to happen next. And your experience of the world isn't what's out there, it's what your brain is self-creating about what it expects to be out there. Do you get that? So if that didn't make you feel like a little bit funny in your belly, let me just say it one more time, okay? You're not seeing the light in the room. You're not seeing that. No, you're seeing your own best guess about what's happening right now. So the sort of sexy hook is perception is kind of like a controlled hallucination. Hallucination because it's endogenously generated, you get that? And controlled because the hallucination has to chug alongside reality if you're not going to get hit by cars and have other really crazy, unexpected things happen. Okay, you with me so far? So that's a big shift from bottom up to top down. And so for this kind of brain to work, what it has to do is it has to model how the world works, including how you work and how everybody else works, because it has to have a model that it then builds those predictions out of. So for instance, it collects a lot of facts about how the world works, all the regularities and variabilities in the environment, and that helps it determine what some little subset of data might mean in a particular context. For instance, the subset of data that makes up a kitten. And for this kind of system to work, it's always measuring what it expects to be the case against what is actually the case, and then it uses any difference, we call that a prediction error. It's also a measure of uncertainty. It's also a measure of surprise. Okay, hold on to that for a second. The difference between the way you expect the world to be and the way the world actually shows up we're going to call that a prediction error, kind of surprise. And for this system to work, what it has to do is it has to constantly minimize that surprise. It has to all the time be reducing that uncertainty. It has to be getting its model to better fit the world, or get the world somehow to better fit the model. So I'll give you an example. If the temperature drops below an expected rate, then you're going to feel uncomfortable, right? You're going to feel uncomfortably cold. That's a prediction error. It's a surprise. It's a surprise to your biosystem. Surprise, you're colder than you expect to be. Okay? How do you manage that uncertainty? How do you manage that surprise? Well, there's two big ways you can do that. One, you can change the model to better fit the world. Okay? You can hang out in a cold plunge for a minute. Do that enough times, and you'll change your expected rate. So suddenly, dropping a degree down might not be as unexpected as it was a minute ago. In that case, what's happening is you're not cold anymore because you've updated your model to better fit the reality. You get that? It's okay? Or two, you can do the easier thing. You can just go out and change the world to better fit your model, which is you expect to be this temperature. So you're going to go out and get a blanket or a hot tea, and in that way you're going to reduce the uncertainty. I just want to point out that lighting now. So I just want to point out quickly, and this system, for it to work, it has to minimize surprise. So there's the first puzzle we're working with. Why is it then that the cognitive system is primarily interested in reducing surprise, reducing uncertainty, and yet we do all of these very weird things? So it's not only like sort of weird for you personally, it's very weird for me as a researcher. I'm going to do something now just to show you how it works. The fact that your perception is always some mix of sensory information and your own expectations. So here's a bit of information. It's noisy, you've probably never seen this before. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to update your generative model. Okay, I've just updated your model. Now the fact is, for the rest of your life, you'll never unsee that. That's a cowgirl kissing a horse, right? You can just see that clear as day. And that'll never go back for you. It'll never go back for you, because now you have an expectation that's able to fill out the map. You're not just seeing what's there, you're seeing your predictions about what are there. Is that good? Are we okay so far? Okay. Right, so if we are a prediction engine, if the brain is a kind of prediction engine, and it's always trying to reduce uncertainty, and by reducing uncertainty, it's getting a really good grip on how things are in the world so that you can survive, then why don't we end up in dark rooms? Why don't we just love secluded, perfectly certain spaces? Sometimes when I say this to my PhD students, they say, oh God, I'd love to be in a dark room. That just sounds like the best. PhDs are like very, very challenging if you haven't done it before. But for most of us, we don't want to stay in a dark room, and why is that? Well, part of the answer is the role that emotions are playing in this kind of system. So for the past few years, we've been working on what do feelings do in this kind of cognitive system. And one of the really interesting outcomes is we expect that one of the things that feelings are doing, the feeling especially of things going well or going poorly, is a reflection of how well we're managing uncertainty. So when your predictions are doing well at getting you where you expect to be, so you're reducing surprises very, very well, you feel good. And when you're not reducing surprises very well, that means your model's not very well of your environment, and so you might start feeling bad. This is actually a graph from a couple of researchers named Joffrey and Corricelli. I think it's very, very good. The top left one is the one I want to focus on just right now. Right there, you got it? Okay. Just check it out. So when prediction errors or surprises are on a runaway, we're afraid. Why are we afraid when errors are suddenly on a rise? Because if errors are suddenly on a rise, it means your model's not doing a very good job of figuring out how the environment works. That's fraught with dangers for animals like us, right? When errors are very, very high and we can't bring them down, we're unhappy. Why are we unhappy? Because we just can't make a fit. We have all these expectations for things that we want to have happen in our lives, and it's just not coming. That's maybe what we mean by unhappiness. When errors are suddenly lowering again, drastically, when surprise is lowering again, it feels good. Why does it feel good? Because you figured it out. Like imagine you come from high school to university and your old model just isn't working, you're getting C's, you expect to be getting A's, you're an A student in high school, you're a C student here. Once you get your model fitting well with the university program so that your marks start getting better and better and better, we start feeling hope, right? We feel like, my model's starting to catch up now, and when errors are well managed, we're happy. That means we know what's going on, we know how to fit, we know how to adapt to our environment. So why don't we end up in dark rooms? Part of the reason is because we feel good by reducing surprise. So if your brain is a prediction engine, you can also say that your brain is a kind of surprise-reducing engine. But here's the trick. Your brain doesn't want no uncertainty. It doesn't want no error. It's a surprise reducing engine. It's an uncertainty reducing engine. What's implied in that? You want to kick it back to me? What's implied? Yeah, you got to have some uncertainty, right? It's this uncertainty reducing engine. Okay, so we feel good when we are resolving surprises, which means we need to have some surprises. So why don't you end up in dark rooms? Eventually there wouldn't be any surprise. You with me so far? Yeah, good. So we don't end up in dark rooms very often. Maybe at the end of a PhD you do a long-term dark room exposure, maybe that's true. But we don't end up in dark rooms because we are on the lookout for surprises to reduce. Now, why would we want to do that? Well, part of the trick is, where are you going to find the best surprises to reduce? We call these consumable errors. Where are you going to find the uncertainties that are best to reduce? Let's just have a think. Baby studies help us figure it out. Babies orient towards a particular kind of complexity. The complexity is that complexity just outside of the range they're comfortable with. Where are you going to find the best uncertainty to reduce if it feels good to reduce uncertainty? Well, it won't be way off in the volatility sphere, right? And if all you listen to is punk, you're not going to go to a classical concert and expect to be like reducing uncertainty very, very well. That might be too much. You think, oh, I don't like this at all. What you want to do is you want to go to where your skills and abilities are and then just go right into the outside of it. That's where you're going to get the maximum amount of uncertainty that you're capable of reducing given your skills and abilities. It's exactly what we see in babies. It's what we see in rats as well. If you build a maze with rooms that increase in complexity, rats hang out in the room just over the one they're most familiar with. And we're already building all sorts of really interesting, curious robots using exactly this idea of building things that hang out just over the edge of where they're most comfortable. And in fact, play of all kinds is a version of this. In order for something to be fun, there has to be some uncertainty in it. So my 2-year-old right now just likes running. She's new to running. So when she runs, she's like, woo! There's all sorts of surprise here to manage in my little legs. But it's not long before running is like a chore, right? If any of you run in the morning, you probably know, like, oh God, running again. What do we have to do to make that fun again? Well, one thing we could do is we could create a bunch of uncertainty to digest. What do? Well, let's tie our legs together. Let's blindfold ourselves. Let's run backwards. Let's carry an egg. Those are all ways that we as humans, we don't just wait for uncertainty to reduce. We're smart and also very weird. We create a bunch of uncertainties in order to reduce them. You get that? Okay, so we love reducing uncertainties. Gives us a sense that we've got a good predictive grip. It's one of the reasons why things like Animal Crossing became so popular during COVID. I don't know if you know that. Do you know what Animal Crossing is? Yeah, it's like this fun, cute little game. Right. It became really interesting because COVID was super pressurized and it came with a lot of uncertainty. And games that had little opportunities to reduce uncertainty felt very, very good to us. It felt like a lifeline. And that's really what all play is about, honestly, to hang out at that edge and to create that edge for ourselves. And whatever is fun today won't be fun tomorrow. That's a constantly moving target, isn't it? Okay. So, first puzzle, it's kind of weird we do all this uncertainty stuff. It's especially weird for a cognitive neuroscientist who's interested in the brain as an uncertainty-reducing engine. Then it looks a little less weird once we include, oh wait, it's not that an uncertainty-reducing engine should have no uncertainty, not that. An uncertainty-reducing engine should be constantly reducing uncertainty. Okay, well that makes it look a little less weird. But what about that even weirder thing we do, which is expose ourselves to really weird, uncertain material like horror movies? Horror movie fans? Yes. Horror movie haters? Yes. Okay. This is actually a very old riddle that we think the same framework helps us explain. It's called paradox of horror. Why is it that you, as a biological agent who's built to avoid things like noxiousness and disgust and all of these things were reverse fear. Why is it that you're built for that and yet you keep orienting towards it? Why is it that we're built to get away from noxious things but we can't stop watching Pimple Popper MD? You just go, oh yeah, oh God, it's so gross. I want to smell it again. Give it to me one more time. Oh God, that's way worse than I thought it was. Okay, one more time. Why do we do that? Morbid curiosity is such an interesting research program. So we're doing work on recreational fear. I get to work closely with some wonderful people at the Recreational Fear Lab in Denmark. They're the best at doing this. They do only research basically on fun, scary situations, why it might be good for us, and that's what we're looking at as well. So why might getting us in touch with scary stuff be good for our kind of brain? And the answer is maybe surprising. Well, of course, one thing with scary movies, let me tell you about this first. This is awesome. This is one of the experiments that the Recreational Fear Lab did. Every year at Halloween, they set up a horror house in Denmark, and then they put people in a bunch of biophysical feedback stuff, checking skin conductance and heart rate variability and respiratory dynamics, and then they chase them around with live chainsaws dressed up like pigs. Oh, you can just see them right there. See the chainsaw just to the right? Exactly. Science. Isn't that cool? If you're thinking about getting into science, look at the cool stuff we can do. So we scare the hell out of people, and then we see, well, how was that? And what they found was exactly the sort of thing we expected. If they don't have much response in their body, it's not much fun. And if they have too much response in their body, it's not too much fun, right? It's right in the middle where they're having the most fun, where there is the resolvable uncertainty. Not so volatile that they don't know what to do with it, and not so simple that it's boring, but just the right amount of uncertainty is the one that they find most exciting. Okay, so why might we like horror movies? I'm gonna suggest three things quick. Exactly, here we go. I'm gonna suggest three things quick for why we like horror movies as an opportunity to introduce ourselves to more uncertainty. One, horror movies are built for uncertainty-reducing engines just like you. Actually, a horror movie just by itself creates a bunch of tension and resolves it. So one of the reasons we like it was because the same reason we like anything. We like it when there's tension that gets resolved. But there's two other really interesting things that are coming out of our research that I think is worth sharing. One is we can go to horror movies in order to reduce uncertainty over things that might happen to us in the future. So for example, during COVID, suddenly everybody's watching pandemic movies. Isn't that weird? Like we're dying of worry about this thing. And what do? We go, okay, let's go watch a pandemic movie. That sounds like fun. Let's have a panic attack on Tuesday night. But I think this is right. This is what we think as well. This was from the New York Times. You can see at the bottom, it says, we've turned to this movie in part to know how bad things can get. And so we're going to this thing, which feels very uncertain, but we're doing it in order to manage our future uncertainty over similar scenarios. Sometimes we go to media like this rather than to other sources because it's readily available. We do this to fill out our generative model so that we can make better predictions when we end up in those sorts of situations. That's one. Let me give you the other one that I think is maybe even more interesting. One of the great things that we're learning how to predict when we come into contact with horror movies, which are fraught with uncertainty, is we're starting to better predict how we respond when we get inundated with uncertainty. So what's actually happening in the body when we encounter scary or horrifying or noxious stimuli? I think a good example is this one from anxiety. Anxiety has a natural arc. If any of you have had a panic attack before, you'll know this. There's a natural arc. You can keep having a panic attack forever. And yet, one of the worst parts of a panic is it feels like it's going to go on forever, right? You get scared and you think, oh God, this is just my permanent state. How do you come to be more comfortable with a panic? Well, one of the ways is just handle a little bit more. You'll get used to it. You'll sort of get there's a natural curvature to your anxiety. But in order to model that kind of curvature, you need to actually be exposed to that kind of uncertainty. So one of the things that's happening when we get into contact with highly uncertain media, like horror movies, is we're learning, well, what is it like to feel uncertain? And Colton Scrivener, my colleague in this horror research, has done some really great work on the mental resilience, mental well-being, and resilience of horror movie aficionados in the face of things like COVID. And part of his hypothesis is little drips and drabs of worry and fear over a long time help your predictive brain better predict what it's like to be in stress. And so that when the body is in stress, it's better able to cope with it. Isn't that so interesting? And if you wanted to check up on this, there's lots of good material. Margie Kerr's book called Scream is excellent. It's a big collection of all of the other sort of safe, scary things that are probably good for us. Okay. To wrap, it's weird that we like uncertainty. Cognitive neuroscience makes it look a little bit weird and then actually helps us better understand it. If there's one take home from this cognitive neuroscience framework, it might be something like your optimal flourishing is always going to be found just at your edge. So don't be afraid to push yourself into a little bit of discomfort, but just the right amount of discomfort. And finding that, locating that kind of discomfort and making the most of it is a sort of art. But be brave and lean in. Thanks.